When I started my flock of St. Croix sheep in 2009, I started with just 3 ewes and a ram. And I knew not to breed close relatives, but I really didn't have a plan or a strategy back then on how to eliminate inbreeding. And so I made some mistakes, and I did see some evidence of inbreeding in my flock, which I've corrected, but I'd like to go over a strategy of how to nearly eliminate all inbreeding when you're trying to raise a small flock of sheep. Here's a chart that shows my ram A and 3 ewes 1, 2, and 3. Now I purchased my ram and my ewes from the same farm, and if I'd been smarter, I would have purchased the ram from a different farm and maybe each of the ewes from a different farm. And we'll see why that's important a little later. So when the ram bred these 3 ewes, they produced offspring, which I've added here on the chart. On average, St. Croix sheep give birth to twins, and for purposes of illustration, I'm going to say that every set of twins was a male and a female. To keep up with the offspring, I'm naming each of the offspring with a combination of the letter and number of the ram and the ewe. So if we look at these offspring, if we were to sell them or slaughter them or neuter them, we would completely avoid all inbreeding. And that's a pretty good model to sell the offspring, because you don't want these all breeding together at this point. Now, if we want a larger herd and we want to keep the female ewes to grow the herd out, we've got to get rid of all the males. So we have to replace the main sire, and we have to get rid of the other 3 males. So when we do this, we can now bring these younger ewes, A1, A2, and A3, and we can make them into breeding stock for an entirely new flock. And we need a new ram, Ram B, that will now start becoming the sire of the entire flock of all 6 of these ewes. When Ram B breeds these 6 ewes, you'll now have, if you have twins, you'll now have 12 offspring. And you can't let these offspring breed with each other because they'll be inbred. So the solution is to sell or slaughter them. And as long as you get rid of the offspring every year, you'll be just fine. There won't be any inbreeding at all. But let's say your goal is to have a herd of or a flock of 100 sheep. You still got a long ways to go. So if you want to use these 6 ewes you've just created with your herd and grow your herd out, you need to get rid of all your males. And again, you need to replace your herd sire. This lets you make the ewes B1, B2, B3, and BA1, BA2, BA3 into regular ewes that now you can use to grow out your herd. And you need a new flock sire or stud to breed your entire flock of now 12 different ewes. Now this is where it starts getting complicated. This arrangement with 1 ram and 12 ewes will, if they produce twins, will produce 24 offspring every year. And that's a great place to stop. And if you get rid of these 24 offspring every year, there's absolutely no inbreeding. So that's one really good strategy. So in building a herd of 100 sheep, I knew I wanted to generate my own rams. I didn't want to have to keep going out and trying to find new rams every year because it was expensive, and also I couldn't have a closed flock. And I wanted to have a closed flock for biosecurity, so I wasn't introducing a new animal to my flock every year. But because I hadn't thought this through on the front end, I'd kind of painted myself into a corner, because I realized that all of the DNA that was used to create this flock, and this is like 36, 37 animals now, they all came out of just 6 individuals, 3 original ewes and 3 new rams. And I got the 3 original ewes and Ram A all from the same farm. If I'd been smarter, I would have gotten the 3 ewes from 3 different farms, and of course the 3 rams from 3 different farms. So if I ever wanted to generate my own rams and let them breed freely, the first problem is I would see probably brothers and sisters mating with each other, And that's a pretty high coefficient of inbreeding. It's like 25% for a brother-sister match. But the other problem is that all of the offspring are half siblings. So if one of these little males wants to mate with one of the other little females, they're all half brother and half sister. And so that's a 12.5 coefficient of inbreeding, which is also very high. So what if I'd started differently with 7 males and 7 females, all from different farms? And I know this is pretty impractical, but let's just look at this as being a goal of what I should have done or try to come close to. This would be breeding with a 1-to-1 male to female ratio, which is what you see out in nature every day. Almost every species has just as many males as females, and there's a really good reason for that. So when these 14 individuals breed in 7 pairs, and let's say they all produce twins, there's as much genetic diversity as possible with this type of arrangement. And a brother-sister pair could mate, which would be a high coefficient of inbreeding of 25%. But there's only a 1 chance in 7 of mating with your own sibling with this arrangement. There's 6 chances out of 7 that an individual ram will mate with the other 6 female offspring, which produces a 0% coefficient of inbreeding, no inbreeding at all. And so if you average this single chance of 25% inbreeding with 6 chances of 0% coefficient of inbreeding, you end up with an average of 3.57% coefficient of inbreeding for the flock, which is acceptable. So what do you do with our original situation? Potentially, they could breed with their own sister, and that's going to happen no matter what. Whenever you have natural breeding, you're going to have some of this going on. But even if they breed with the others, they're still going to be breeding with their half siblings, which is still a high coefficient of inbreeding. So how do you correct this situation? Well, first you want to get rid of this Ram C because his DNA is all through your herd. So you want to get rid of him, and you want to replace him with several new males because what you want to do is to bring the male to female ratio back up to 1-to-1. And it's a really good opportunity for you to go out and find some superior males to add this genetic diversity to your flock. But once you get your male to female ratio closer to 1-to-1, there's going to be a lot less inbreeding in your flock when you start letting them all breed naturally. And you're going to have some genetically inferior offspring. So you're going to need to cull anything you think that may have come out of inbreeding, and it might become obvious to you. When I first ran into this problem, I had 2 baby lambs that were born, and their mouth didn't meet together. They kind of had an overbite, and they couldn't nurse correctly. And instead of trying to help them with milk replacer, I just got rid of them. And I started realizing that inbreeding is a real problem. I believe that's what caused my problem. And no matter what you do, you're going to have some inbreeding in your flock. That's just what happens. But you don't have to encourage it. I've seen some breeders that have bragged about breeding the same animal to like 7, 8, or 9 generations, which is totally insane. They do this to enhance certain characteristics, but I believe it's also damaging their breed. From what I've seen and from talking to farmers who breed animals, they tell me that you can breed an animal to its own daughter, but when you breed it again to its granddaughter, that's when you start having problems with it. And whenever you get a brand new ram that's genetically diverse from your herd, and you breed with it, that totally destroys all the inbreeding for the next generation because there's no more common ancestors anymore. You've got a whole different set of ancestors on the male side, and that reduces or eliminates inbreeding. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. Please leave me a comment below and tell me what you think. Thanks.